Mom was over at Uncle Ted's house, and Mom perceived instantly that something was wrong. I said, "What's wrong, Glenn?" He's like, and then they decided they'd tell him. Well, when he did, then of course Isabel, oh my God, you saw demons, you saw the devil, because
Isabel was Ted's wife?
Ted's wife is a devoutly religious Catholic person who thinks anything that isn't a vision of, say, the Virgin Mary or Jesus is quote-unquote demons, and that's what we saw. And of course Ted, oh God, he just put her off. And we really never talked about it much in the family because of the reaction it got. And my dad was really afraid, and so was Ted. And Glenn especially, because Glenn made the statement about when he first saw the military. He told my father, he said, and Ted and everybody there, don't let them some bitches know I'm a Marine. Don't let them know. And of course nobody did, and he was in civilian clothes, so he had a pair of blue jeans on, and he was in civilian clothes, so he didn't look like military, or I'm sure his ass had been in real trouble. And they never checked. They just assumed, I guess, that we were.
Did they ask your names?
Oh yeah, they took our names. They got all that from my dad, and my brother just very cursory would, just hardly talk to him at all. He let Dad and Ted do most of the talking, which was pretty smart, I think, under the circumstances. And of course, they never really asked me any questions at all.
You were just a kid.
Yeah, I was just a kid. And
well, you first went public with this. Now, let's first square away. All the other four that you were with are dead.
Yes.
It's been some time.
And my brother died of a heart attack in Mexico City. My dad died of a heart attack in '78. And Ted and Victor were killed in an automobile accident in the mid-'60s, and I assume it was '65.
Right, now, there's a strange diary that's turned up. How did that happen?
Well, when I went to my father's funeral in 1978, a lot of Dad's personal belongings were given to us boys.
You didn't live in the area at the time.
Oh, no.
You'd gone off to the military.
I've been in the military, and subsequently, on return from the military, moved to Colorado immediately. And
your dad had remarried a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. This was,
so
Dad was on his third wife. And his personal belongings and stuff, were kind of given to my two brothers and myself. And my cousin Valley Jean was there at the funeral.
That's Ted's daughter?
Yes. And she came up and was talking to me, and she said, here, you were there, you need to have this too. And she handed me these photocopies. And at first, I thought, well, what is this, Dad's diary? She said, no, it's my dad's diary, but you were there, you need to have this. And then it dawned on me what I was looking at, and because I read a little bit of it. And so I said, yeah, okay, and I didn't want to talk about it at the funeral because Roz's side of the family, God bless her.
That's your dad's third wife.
God bless her, I loved her. But they were very religious, and they would have viewed this exactly the same way as Isabel had, as evil. And I really didn't want to have any problems with them. We were kind of on shaky terms. We didn't see eye to eye religiously, so we're not quite.
Well, you're active in religion now, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
You're a deacon in the Episcopal Church?
Right.
Okay, that means you actively participate in
service.
Well,
yeah, lay Eucharistic ministry.
Okay.
So yes, I actively participate. I serve on the altar.
What do you do for a living now?
I'm a security officer in the state of Missouri.
And you've been doing police sort of work for several years now?
Oh, yes, about 9 years all told.
And you also are going to college to be a nurse, and you've already got a couple of associate degrees from community colleges.
Right, yes. One Associate of Science and one Associate of General Studies, and I'm working toward my Bachelor's of Nursing. In roughly 2 years, I will have my Bachelor of Nursing. I'll be a licensed.
Now, to be a security officer, you have to be licensed by the state of Missouri, do you?
Yes, you have to be a certified law enforcement officer, which means that you have to have gone to the state academy, the Department of Public Safety.
So that's not just a pickup thing.
Oh, no, you have to
attend
the academy. Yes, it's definite.
Okay.
And you have to work for the state under these conditions. You have to not only be certified, but you have to have prior law enforcement experience.
Now, when we get back to the diary for just a minute, when you were hypnotized by John Carpenter, a psychiatric social worker, and he was asking you questions about the diary, apparently you'd been told that there were a number of copies of that around?
Yeah.
Something buried out maybe there too?
Yeah, as I understood. Well, in fact, in conversations with Valley Jean after the fact, after I got involved in this thing through the Unsolved Mysteries thing, I was told that that wasn't the only diary. That what I had was a copy. Well, it was a photocopy.
Okay.
And that there were a lot of these copies around, and apparently Uncle Ted or someone had put these out through different people in the family and friends and stuff for reasons, I don't know, to keep them from getting lost or something like that.
Okay, now when I asked you for the original, you contacted who?
Well, yeah, Valley Jean.
That was Valley Jean, okay.
Right.
She was in a convent.
Right.
And she was reluctant to do anything. You had to call a number of times, as I recall.
That's correct.
And you talked to the bishop? Somebody talked to him?
Yeah, I talked to a bishop.
And he convinced her to send the stuff to me?
Yes, apparently.
Okay, because I got it directly from Colorado with a cover letter that strongly indicated that she didn't want any more to do with this. That was part of the agreement. But that she considered this the work of the devil, or words to that effect anyway.
Yeah, I think she's of the same opinion that her mother was.
Okay,
It
so
was the work of the devil. And you see, all I ever had of this was the photographic copies that I had showed you originally. And as I understand it, you received the original.
I received the
copies,
original
the
from
originals.
which those had been made. They were partly burnt. She mentioned she had intended to burn them, but because of your persistence and with the agreement that I never contact her, she would send them to me. And as you know, when I had forensic analysis done, it showed that the ink dated from the early 70s. The paper could have been available in 47. So it was clearly not an original. But it was also done before there was any publicity about this case. Anyway, because I know I was the first one to get involved.
Exactly.
Now, as you know, we have discovered, not I, but you had identi-sketches done by a police artist of the various people involved in this.
Right.
And as you know, there is a picture, several pictures that seem to indicate that Dr. Buskirk was Dr. Winfred Buskirk, who had received his PhD at the University of New Mexico. And you had described him as in his late 30s, early 40s. It turns out he was 39 in 1947. He was bald and been bald most of his life, even up to then. Was there other contact between you and he at that time, as far as you knew? Your family and him, or?
I don't know.
Well, not to your knowledge.
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe my dad had ever contacted him. There's a possibility that Ted may have, and I'm not sure why. I think Valley Jean had alluded to the fact that Ted had been in contact with him, and that they had corresponded and this kind of thing. But as far as any personal knowledge of it, no.
Okay, now you didn't tell your story really until the Unsolved Mysteries program was rerun in January of 1990?
That's right.
That's when you contacted them, got my address, wrote me, wrote Kevin Randall, and we're a little upset that the program wasn't quite accurate.
Well, yeah, that was the whole thing. It started off as a fluke to begin with, because everything that I saw didn't jive with what I had seen personally. And I guess I was kind of miffed, here all these years. I had been primarily forced, by not only by others, but by, my own sense of survival to keep my mouth shut. And wow, here it is, it's on TV, and he got it wrong. And so, I just impulsively called the number and told the lady, wait a minute, that whole thing was wrong. Well, how do you know that, sir? And I said, well, because I was there, that's why. And boy, that apparently pulled somebody's string.
Yeah, and the key thing that was wrong, of course, there were a few mistakes in an otherwise excellent program, was that they had that, the Barney Barnett, the civil engineer story, over near Corona, and you knew that it was over in the plains.
Right.
There's a lot more.
Well, yeah, and then the fact that the thing looked like a tin flat hat or a tin top hat, and it didn't. It was dish shape, and Barney Barnett, or whoever the guy in the truck was, did not drive right up to it on a road. It wasn't parked conveniently next to a thoroughfare, you know.
Right.
And it was just things like that. And I don't know. I just, for some reason, I thought, well, you know, geez, look.
It's already public.
Yeah, the story's out, and let's get it right, you know. Of course, I don't think I realized at the time, you know, how involved this was going to be, but
what kind of response?
You live and learn.
Now, I got you together with John Carpenter, the psychiatric social worker, and you guys had several sessions, and then we flew out to the site. You're reasonably convinced now that the second time around out there we did find the exact location.
Yeah, the first time in, you know, it was like 43 years.
And we're in a helicopter, which
I
you never...
Yeah, I was in the air this time, and the last time I was on the ground. And so, you know, the landmarks were a little confusing. I was positive I was in the right place. But until we actually got on the ground, John and I, and retraced the route in there that we had come in the car, I wasn't absolutely sure. There was two ridge lines there, and I wasn't really sure of which one it was. And I had the feeling that the first one that I pointed out was the correct one, but once I went in on the ground on foot with John, I knew instantly that it wasn't that one, it was the other one, and I'm absolutely positive that that's where I was at. There's no question in my mind.
And you will recall that you described the woman who sold you the pop on the way in?
Right.
And we found the older woman there who said that was exactly what she looked like in the
right.
so.
And I'll never forget that lady because I had it with the heat. I'm telling you, back seat of that 40 Plymouth, down those dirty old roads and stuff, and for mile after mile. And of course, my dad was one of these kind of people. When he got in a car, it was point A to point B nonstop. I don't know why. He just never stopped to smell the roses along the way. And so, you know, I was pretty sad shape, and you know, I remember that lady quite well.
What kind of response have you had? You went public. I mean, John talked to a newsman. You both talked. He called me. In the Springfield newspaper, paper carried a very straight, very large article, and that got spread around by lots of people. So suddenly you're a celebrity, if you will. What kind of reaction from the people who knew you on campus where you worked, your friends?
Oh, very, very few negativists. There's the noisy negativist, you know. We have those.
But in general, generally supportive.
99% of the people were incredibly supportive. Only one professor at the university was of the negativist type that was vocal about it. Everybody else is just 100% supportive. The majority of these people are absolutely convinced, even without this story, that extraterrestrial life forms exist and that the people are flying around out there and moving between systems and stuff. And it's just an unbelievable amount of support.
You didn't lose your job.
Oh no!
Your boss didn't give you a hard time.
Absolutely not. In fact, I think I can publicly say that my boss is extremely supportive because he is a avid ufologist himself. He is fascinated by the subject, and you won't have any problem convincing him either. And my boss has a master's degree. He's not someone that's untrained observer that's given to hallucination. Most of the people who are the most supportive of me are people with very high educations, very, very solid education, very solid, upstanding degree people, not given to hallucination.
You attended a UFO conference with John Carpenter, and he gave a paper, I guess, and introduced you.
Sure did.
And you've got a response from that audience too.
Yeah, 100% supportive. I was really quite relieved and made very, very welcome. And,
well, you've been interviewed by a number of other people. Linda Howe, working on a documentary and so forth, seems to have brought the story. Now, how much contact did you have with Kevin Randall?
A very brief telephone call. I came home from work one day and there was a message on my answering machine, and as you well know, I have a tendency to be hard to get a hold of.
Yes.
And he'd left his number, and of course I had his address and and yours, and I had sent cards to both of you and something to the effect, if you want to know what really happened out there, call me.
Yeah.
And he had called and I wasn't there, and he had left his number, so I returned his call. Now, I talked to him